Hey team, how you going? Just thought I'd send out this little video to you all. I see there's a few people riding, which is fantastic. Gearing up for next year, no doubt. But look, there's two ways to train, guys. There's the really hard way, and there's the really easy way. So the really easy way basically is just starting now, and that's really the difference between making the ride on yourself a lot easier. It's just starting now, and do little, do a lot. It doesn't really matter. The training will be broken down into different areas, but one of the most important ones really is just get your bum used to the saddle, right? That's the thing that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with. Now, for those of you that have ridden, last year, maybe for the first time, you might be a little bit hesitant about getting going again because you remember how maybe it was a little bit tough. But ask yourself the real question: did you really train for it? And more importantly, is your training providing value? Now, we'll start with a disclaimer, right? I'm not a professional rider by any stretch of the imagination, but what I am experienced. I've only been riding for about 7 years now, but I'm fortunate that I've had 5 years. I've had a coach, and my coach, Yanni Kustov, is, he's an ex-Olympian, triathlete, pro cyclist, so the guy had me on some structure, and very gratefully he's been able to help me get set up in my home studio, pretty much a replica of what he did for me at V-Bike, which was very helpful. So at least I have some more structure now, which is great, and I'm able to whack out some regular riding. I'm pleased about that. But listen, when we look at the rides on Strava, okay, there's several things that I'm looking for, and this is why we like you to be on Strava, because we can actually help you from afar. There's several of us, and we'll be looking, but we just don't look at the ride and give you the kudos, the thumbs up, just because you did a ride, because like there's riding and there's riding. What we do is we look at all the ins and outs, and we actually have a real good look at your data. Your data tells me a lot, not only how many kilometers are riding a week, and your speed and all that sort of stuff, but what it tells me is it can show me whether you're actually improving or not, and it also shows me in what areas you're improving. The more gear you have on your bike that give us the data, the better it is, because Strava makes a lot of assumptions. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, it's like, why would you even bother? Any exercise you do, highly recommend have a heart rate monitor. If you don't know what your heart is doing, how can you measure if you're getting better or not? How can you measure when you're whether you're running? I'm an ex-runner. I used to run marathons and all sorts of things. I've always known what my heart rate was, even way back in the days, in the sort of mid to late 70s and the early 80s. Heart rate monitors were very expensive, but I was fortunate enough to be able to, be provided with all that sort of gear. It is important, guys. It is important, and I've got some things here, and we'll just start with your heart rate. All right. Your heart rate is extremely important, because it will actually help you whether you're doing endurance or you're doing sort of like interval type stuff. But for this ride, it's purely about endurance, and you need to know what your resting heart rate is. That's your baseline. You need to know what your resting heart rate is. You can work that out. It's really easy. You hop up in the morning when you're nice and relaxed. You're fresh. You're ready to go. If you've got a heart rate monitor like a Fitbit or a Garmin or whatever, that sort of stuff, or you're wearing a heart rate monitor, whatever it is, have a look at it over a period of a few days, a week, or 10 days, a month if you have to give you that average resting heart rate. So there's your baseline. All right. You also need to know what your maximum heart rate is, and that's really simple. Take your age, you deduct your age from 220, and that's your maximum heart rate. Really easy. If you want to know what your threshold one is, this is the one for fat burning. you take your age and you take your age off 180. All right. So that, you know, that'll give you that lower end, and you sort of want to be optimum. You know, this is for me, for the training I'm doing at the moment. I like to hover around about that 124, 125 beats on average. So yes, it's going to be higher sometimes, and sometimes it's going to be a little bit lower depending on what you're doing. I'm doing a training at the moment called Slow to Go Fast. Some of you some of you newer riders might like to try this. It might work for you. It worked for me. It's slower to go faster. Sure, we can put out some big power. I've seen Johnny boy there. He whacks out enough power to burn 4 pieces of toast at times. You know, it's just incredible. But that comes from experience and strength. All right. So to produce power, you need to know what your FTP is, and we'll cover that in a second. But you can produce, you can spin at a higher cadence, and we'll talk about that, to produce consistent power to give you good speed, right? So you can do, you look at a pro cyclist, you know, these are young guys, of course, they're all, you know, under 30 years old, so they got relatively high heartbeats, usually around about 160 thereabouts, but you know, they can produce, they can do, say, a 100-kilometer ride quite easily with a low heart rate of 130, 140, something like that, and still do 30, 40, 50 kilometers an hour on average, you know, with a high cadence. So it's about you knowing what your heart rate is. If you know what your heart rate is, you can train. So I'm actually currently training slow to go fast. So they have a lower heartbeat, higher cadence, which gives me a slightly lower power and sometimes a slower speed, but over time you actually get quicker because your cadence training is getting you up. So your cadence, and we'll cover that shortly, is getting higher. Your heartbeat, because your fitness is getting more stable, you can learn to control that, which means then the difference is strength, and the more riding you do, the stronger you will become over time. So eventually, over time, you'll become faster. So don't worry about your speed, don't worry about your distance, just do time, heart rate, that sort of stuff, and that'll be really good. And you watch it, it will increase. So FTP is a good one. Look, guys, if you haven't had an FTP test, I'd highly recommend getting it done. You want to know where you're starting, right? Strava will make all sorts of assumptions based on your age and your weight. All right. And that's not always right, because like if you haven't had an FTP test or you're not got a power meter, we have to go on the assumptions that Strava makes, and every time you do a ride, it recalculates that assumption that it's making. So it's not really accurate, and we can't really tell if you're getting stronger, fitter, faster, anything like that. All right. See, FTPs, that's functional threshold power. So this is the maximum amount of power that you can produce over 60 minutes. All right, so we're not asking you to do a 60-minute test. There's ways we can test it, but it's the highest average power you can sustain for an hour, basically. It's measured in watts. All right, how many watts you can produce. So the best way to estimate it is get yourself a power meter, or get access to a power meter, a turbo trainer with a power meter. Your local bike shop might be able to lend you one, or might be able to do an FTP test for you. But really what you want to do is you want to do a solid state, which means you want to be able to get something that's even, you know, whether it's a hill for 20 minutes or a flat for 20 minutes with no wind, no lights and all that sort of stuff. But you need to ride consistently, all out, basically as hard as you can possibly go for 20 minutes, right? No resting, no nothing. It's as hard as you can go for only for 20 minutes, right? This is after a warm-up, of course. Then you'll actually look at your average power over your peak power over that 20 minutes, and then we just multiply that by 0.95, so it's 95%, and that gives you your functional threshold performance. So why this FTP is important is because then your training rides, we actually have some starting point to measure. We can see if you're getting stronger or if you need to work on certain areas. And you can do this test every 6 or 8 weeks or something like that, and it's really exciting when you see your FTP go up. That's really, really awesome. So how you can do that? You can do that. How can you do that? You do here, bike shop. You go and see a bike shop or a cycling studio or a friend with a turbo trainer, long as it's measured. If you haven't got a power meter, you can still do it, but you will need a speed and cadence sensor. You will need somewhere that's consistent you can ride on, whether it's a flat road for 20 minutes with no interruptions. So you really want to be going at the same speed and not have any outside forces that are influencing you. But if you've got a speed and cadence sensor, then you can get it done. If you're struggling, reach out to one of the more experienced riders who know a little bit about FTPs and possibly get you the help that you need. Cadence, talk about cadence, guys. I had a question / comment yesterday from H from Wellington. Hi, Helen. About how can I go, I did 100 Ks in just over 2.5 hours. Well, that was an average speed of 39 point something kilometers an hour. Yes, it's up there, but it was on a turbo trainer. To be fair, I actually had, I was running at 80% of my FTP, so I had quite a bit of load on there to start with, but that's as a result of training that I've been doing, structure, all right? And that'll happen for you too. Had it been on the road with stopping and starting with traffic lights, the odd hill, gusts of wind, and all that sort of stuff, then it's completely different, as you know. So, but it's a good measurement for me. All right, I can measure myself against that same ride in about a month's time, which will be really awesome. But the cadence is what got me there. That was the difference. All right, I had what they call high cadence. So when we talk about cadence, all right, that's the pedaling rate. All right, that's the number of revolutions that crank does per minute. All right, you will need a cadence sensor to calculate that, unless you're really quick and fast and good at counting. So it's directly proportional to wheel speed, all right, and it's a distinct measurement, and it changes with gearing, all right. So what I would recommend, you're just starting out, you want to go fast up a hill. You got to do what I'm doing, of course, lose some weight. I've lost 6-7 kilos already, which just recent. That first challenge, and now 2 weeks into the second challenge. So I'm on my way. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting lighter. So little skinny binnies can zoom up the hills generally, because the power to weight ratio is a bit different. But high cadence, right? If you are spinning. You look at your cadence like your car, the revs, how many RPM you want to going up a hill. You've got higher RPM, you're going to zoom up the hill with a little bit less effort. Gearing is the difference, okay? If you're in a low gear and spinning at a higher rate, that puts your engine is your heart, right? Your fitness will get you there. And you're saving your legs, right? If you're using your big leg muscles, you're going to be pumping blood around your body like crazy. Your heart rate's going to go through the roof. Your legs are going to hurt and all that sort of stuff, which is probably why if you're just pushing big gears all around town as fast as you can go, trying to get maximum speed and all that, all you're doing is really wearing yourself out for not much value. Here's my tip. Go down a gear or two, spin at a higher cadence. When I'm talking higher cadence, I'm training to be over 90. All my rides, my coach needs me to be over 90, except for strength ones where I might do some low cadence work of about 60 or 70 RPM. But my average then is not allowed to be below 88, I think he said. But 90. So if you spin at a higher rev, you need you can go in a lesser gear. You'll get good speed, which means you're going to get good distance. But it's easier on your legs, so try that, and that might help. So strength is the other one. You want to do strength, then you need to do a lower cadence with a higher gear, and that brings in all your bigger muscles, your glutes and your hammies and your calves and all that sort of stuff. So try to structure your ride with a bit of everything: higher heart rate, higher cadence, and a bit of strength stuff in there. If you can put all those three things together in most every ride you do, you're going to be so much better. You really are. This week I'm doing 100 Ks was what they call tempo. Oh, we didn't cover that. We should cover all that for you guys, all right? That's your heart rate zones, all right? There is a heart rate zone. So you've got that measurement, all right? Your maximum heart rate, MHR. All right, so zone 1 is 60 to 65% of your MHR, all right, for long, easy rides, and this improves the combustion of fats. Okay, zone 2, 65 to 75% of your MHR, and that's your basic training sort of zone, all right, for longer endurance rides. You don't want to be busting your legs, you don't want to be busting your ticker, all right. Zone 3 is 75 to 82%. That's what we call endurance, and that will develop your aerobic capacity, all right. This is where I spend a lot of my rides at the moment, because it's endurance, of course, and I'm wanting to increase that aerobic capacity. So if you go into zone 4, 82 to 89%, you're really starting to bring your bigger leg muscles and your glutes and all that sort of stuff in. You're pushing some bigger power, and that's simulating pace for when tapering for a race, believe it or not. All right, zone 5, which most training programs go to zone 5. There is a 6th zone. Zone 5 is 89 to 94 of MHR. And that's for really increasing that anaerobic threshold. So your anaerobic threshold is that higher one, and that's the 220 less your age. That's the maximum. Once you go over that, you're getting into the anaerobic. Is it good for your heart? It's okay in short spaces, not a big problem. However, if you're not in a particular good cardiac health, which you all should be, it can be quite dangerous. So just be aware of that. If you have got any sort of issues or family issues with your heart rate, you might want to check with your physician before you start really busting bananas and going hard. Zone 6, pro cyclists occasionally train in here, 94 to 100% of MHR. That's really high intensity interval training. I do interval training, but my interval training is usually in about zone 4. Getting too old to pop my cogs. So if in doubt, reach out to one of the experienced riders. So recommendation before you start riding, 1 is check your bike. Make sure it fits you. Get a bike fit. Guys, it's a really, really, really good investment. It might cost you $200 or $300. Get a bike fit. They'll make sure that everything on the bike is set up for you. You might have, your bike's a bit small. You don't necessarily have to buy a bigger bike. They can change it with seat posts and handlebar stems and things like that. My frame's too small for me. My first bike frame was too small, but it didn't matter. It's set up for me. It's great. So get a bike fit. That's, you don't go listen to Joe Blogs down the road and says, oh, your bike's too big, your bike's too small, or this or that. Right? Get a professional, all right? Get a pro. Get them to do a bike fit. That's the only way you will know. It costs you $200-300, something like that. While you're there, get an FTP test done. Then you're set, all right? And everything you can base from there. So, look, go hard, don't go hard. It doesn't really matter. But we really want to see you do the next ride as easily as you possibly can. Longish video. Hope you got some value. See you later.